Good day, everyone, and Salam Alaikum. On behalf of Global CIO Forum and Arcon, I welcome all the online attendees to this virtual summit on Management Perspective on Smart Information Security. Security professionals inside enterprises are faced with multiple but well-defined challenges. They need to work around very specific objectives and goals. Every incident or action or remediation needs to be measured. And due to the critical nature of this function, every investment must produce the desired result. All actions are time-bound and definitive. Hence, as a security expert, how will you ensure your goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-oriented, or SMART? And this is the theme for today's virtual panel discussion. It's my pleasure to introduce the panelists for this virtual discussion. Joining me are Lalit Popli, COO at Arcon; Ilyas Kulyankal, CISO for one of the largest Islamic banks in the Middle East; Sujata Narasimhan, IT security consultant at FutureX; and Nitin Geo Thomas, Head of Information Technology, Amity University, Dubai. So welcome on board all the panelists. On the housekeeping, there will be 3 rounds of discussions with the panelists, and then we will be taking questions from the audience at the end of this virtual discussion. All attendees are on mute throughout the virtual summit, and we encourage you to post your questions through the chat option, and we'll answer these questions at the end of the discussion. So let's get started and welcome all the panelists. I'm happy to give you the questions in the sequence. We go for first Lalit, to Ilyas, to Sujata, and then Nitin. So let's get started with the first round of questions. So Ilyas, as a cybersecurity practitioner, according to you and your experiences with end customers and the industry, which best practices do you consider as the most effective for enterprises as they transform and manage the pandemic? Go ahead, Lalit.
Yeah, thank you so much for having, and good afternoon to everyone. So I think we have to start in IT. We talk about RCA, the root cause of everything. So very important that the checklist starts with the root, and that is, I think, at a very basic level, your identity. So who's doing, what is doing, from where he's doing. So endpoints, identities are the areas that you actually have to have in your checklist. Then comes the question on how it is getting done, what are the steps that are taking place, what kind of protections you're building in place. So I think the checklist should have these parameters to start with, and then you encompass the whole thing with saying, okay, then what is the kind of objective that I want to attain, what kind of projects I need to run, initiatives I need to kick off to ensure that I achieve my objectives, the security objectives. And once you have that initiatives in place, then your checklist again will keep changing as you go along.
Fantastic. So I think that sounds like a management approach, and of course the root point of all the problems that you mentioned, very interesting. I'd like to go to Ilyas now. So Ilyas, obviously the banking industry, very challenging, always the soft spot for threat actors, regional or global. Your experiences, what would you consider your favorite best practices to manage the enterprise that you represent? Go ahead, Ilyas.
Yeah, thanks Arun, thanks CIO Forum and Arcon for this opportunity to share some thoughts with a big set of audience here. So on that, Arun, basically the approach we take in banking or in any other sectors, information security has to be risk-based. So how do you manage the risk is the most important thing in information security or cyber security. So when it comes to risk management, the most important thing comes again is the data what we own or what we handle. How to make sure that the risk associated with the protection of the data is being taken or understood and taken care. And next comes okay, now if you want to protect the information, one of the key element is access management. How to ensure that access, as Lalit mentioned, who is having access, what is he doing, when he is having access, what is the life cycle of the access, and those elements needs to be connected. So the risk assessment has to be on the data driven. And then one of the primary thing, which is access, which people tend to forget and run behind the latest technologies and solutions, and then you lose the track of the stuff. So the most of the cybersecurity incidents, if you see, it's all based on how somebody is able to manipulate the access or got into the access, and they were able to misuse that access. Either it could be a hacker, it could be a internal employee, it could be a privileged user whom always we forget, someone who has extra privileges.
Very interesting. So just as a CIO, so would you feel more comfortable with less employees, or is the number of employees not a nightmare for you? Go ahead.
So I think, see, number of employees or size of the organization doesn't matter. Basically, you have to understand where is the risk, and you need to prioritize what areas of risk you need to manage. Or it's the first priority or second priority. I mean, it has to be, because if the number 1,000 or 100,000, the controls could be, you can have some baseline control, and you can have the preliminary controls and basic fundamental security practices and baseline kind of controls. That is actually we can implement that across. The main thing is to have the visibility. What is the risk and where I have to prioritize first, and then I need to focus, because otherwise it's a never-ending story. You have thousands of risk and hundreds of thousands of users, and different technologies and services comes every day. It will be always a firefighting. You need to know where you have to focus, and that is the place you have to start working on.
Fantastic. I'm sure we'll be talking about risk in the next few rounds, but I like some of the key takeaways about assessing the risk to data and access, as well as prioritization. Very, very interesting over there. Sujata, same question to you. What are your favorite best practices, considering the last 12 months of extreme challenges with digital transformation coexisting with the challenges of pandemic? Go ahead, Sujata.
So for me, security best practices always starts with having basics in place with any organization, right? There are some basics in terms of ensuring you have a strong authentication mechanism in place. So saying you just enforce a simple, strong password policies, right? You have multi-factor authentication in place. You apply the concept of least privilege. So folks only have access to what they actually need access to, and nothing more than that, right? You ensure separation of duties. So ensuring, essentially saying that there's no privilege creep happening. No one has extra access than required out there. And on top of it all, as Elias mentioned, right, a risk register is something that an organization must have, because that is exactly what determines saying what are the existing risks prevalent in your IT environment. And only if you know there's a risk will you actually have a plan to mitigate it. So a risk register is of paramount importance. And I think in addition to that, you should, the most underrated bit of security practice where I would like to say is having a proper security awareness program for your employees out there, right? I think we all understand that our employees are the first and the last line of defense when it comes to our environments, and empowering them to be more vigilant and more alert in terms of the whole evolving threat landscape will definitely add that power to your organization to combat threats more effectively.
Absolutely fantastic, Sujata. I like the part about the awareness. I think that is something which every organization needs to take stock of. And before I just cross question on the awareness, let's take Nitin's your input on what are your best practices for MIT, considering education has literally transformed and turned itself over in the last 12 months to deliver distance learning, online learning. Go ahead, Nitin.
Thanks, Arun, and thanks a lot for the insights from all the panelists. So basically, when we think about the cybersecurity keyword, actually we require to think about the basics first. basically when we start with the basics, we always start with the risk, what are the risks which is associated with each industry and how to mitigate it, plus who is having the right access to what resources. Basically, if we are keeping all the data in a locker and distributing the key to everyone, that doesn't make any security, because the right people should be having the right security, right key to everyone. So that's the key point of it. And as Sujata has rightly said, we require, I mean, the end users who are accessing these kind of data, the end users who are using one of our IT resources should be rightly educated on how to use it and what exactly are the implications on losing a particular resource or going live with it. So that's basically it's a kind of a journey. Start from identifying the risk, mitigation plans, going towards the implementation and awareness.
Thank you, Nitin. Just on that to cross question, awareness, is it an active part of your activity to raise security awareness amongst the staff in the institution? Go ahead.
See, definitely, yes. Over the last, over the last year, we have drastically changed from the on-site classes to over the online classes, as well as we have shifted almost all of our operations to the virtual world, wherein actually we are carrying a lot of the intellectual data property of the students, as well as a larger, wider community which we deal with. So that's actually giving us a feeling of responsibility of carrying out this risk assessment based on that. So because students are paying fees, we are associated with several bank accounts, financial data, intellectual data. So all those things, which actually we have a control of all those things. So basically, it is mostly like whether you make your employee aware about it, think that I say, see, actually, it might be an application which might be submitted to you, but it may cost a lot more than that. So education, even though it has been looked into a different perspective earlier, now it is basically the data-driven, being a data-driven in the industry over here right now, we almost have a lot of risk associated with that as well.
Okay.
So awareness is a part. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Nitin. Just to continue on that, Ilya's 30-second answer, is security awareness an important activity in your institution? Go ahead. 30 seconds, please.
Yes. Sorry, is it a question to me? Okay.
Ilyas, your take, is security awareness an important part of your execution in the institution? Go ahead.
Yes, definitely. Definitely, security awareness is a key component of the whole holistic approach to security. Is technology, process, and people. And people part awareness is very important. But the only thing I mostly think little differently is that just depending on awareness only is not enough, because even I am very well aware, but sometimes the phishing email comes, I am also tend to click that, and the organization cannot take a risk that Ilyas is made a mistake by clicking and then there is a malware infection in the organization. So the right combination, it's like it's like cooking, you need to have all the ingredients correctly. Awareness is important, and we need to have the right processes, we need to have the right technology to as much as automate the controls, because how much you relieve the user from security mistakes, that much you are secure. So if you completely depending on them, and also if we run for the sake of running security awareness campaigns, because that's how we grown, we say, okay, awareness is required, let us run some awareness training, and for the sake of it, and for ISO certification you need to have this acknowledgement and all this thing. But then on the ground, is it making a difference? Is it actually changing the culture? Is that people have that built-in or inborn vigilance coming as a natural practice? So those all needs to be measured, and we need to be making the awareness very effective. At the same time, awareness is still certain extent. After that, you need to have your other controls also in place.
Fantastic. Ilyas, that was the answer I was looking for. Awareness may not be the master ingredient in the cooking, and you really need to get all the ingredients together. Lalit, your 30-second answer on awareness, because we need to go through, there are many questions. Security awareness, what is your take on that? Go ahead, Lalit.
I think security awareness, as everyone has said, is the base. What is very important is that people in the organization and each one of them understand that it's their responsibility to keep the organization secure. The moment they pass the responsibility to the InfoSec team or the IT team or the CISO as the only person responsible for security, I think then everything what we are talking here is just on paper or theory, as Ilya said, it's just like compliance tick box. But it's easier said than done. There has been a lot of, support from the board members, because it starts from the top. And I think a lot of products and applications and processes have been tuned to get it. But you cannot depend on it, as Ilyas and Nitin directly said. You will have to have a secondary support in terms of some system that will ensure that most of these things, at least you have a double check in addition to the training that you give to everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lalit, for putting that in perspective, and thank you, Sujata, for bringing that up as part of your answers. But of course, all the other points very valid. Risk-based assessment, least privileges, zero trust, and so many others which came up in this first round of discussion. Let's move to the second one, which is quite different, which is essentially all of you would have faced the challenge of justifying a cyber security investment to the decision maker of investment, whether it's the CFO or whether it is the CEO or it is the board. So let's again start in the same sequence. Lalit, your take. What is the typical rule? As you mentioned, you have had many hats in the past. What is your favorite rule of thumb that you think gets an investment through and finally gets a decision made and allows the solution to come on board? Go ahead, Lalit.
I think the world has changed due to COVID. So pre-COVID, you would have a very different rule, and now post-COVID, you have a very different rule. Pre-COVID, you will go through the entire project, evaluation, risk register, what kind of risk you carry, what kind of investment you want to do for the risk. But post-COVID, I think most of them have got modified. Everyone has started understanding that it's no longer a boundary that you had set up, or it's no longer about can this happen to us. I mean, there were scenarios where in some risk scenarios, when you list down a particular scenario, you would be questioned, this can never happen. I think COVID changed that perspective of all CFOs, CEOs, and the senior board members, and they have started accepting scenarios. But the rule of thumb, again, it says you'll go down to what is the first thing is you have to clear the threshold level, is what is the base that you need to do, what is the base benchmark you say without this we cannot survive, whether it's for regulatory reason, compliance reason, or just pure protection reason. And then from there you go into the advanced stages. So that's why there's a common saying in information security, like in many other things, it's like information security is a journey and not a destination.
Thank you, Lalit. Very interesting about the pre-COVID, post-COVID, and removing a scenario that this cannot happen to us. I think absolutely fundamental over there. Ilyas, coming to you now. Obviously, justifying investments is part and parcel of your everyday type of responsibility, right? You need to do the upgrades, you need to do modifications, you need to be right on top of technology, you need to be managing the enterprise laterally, horizontally, vertically, all types. So go ahead, Lalit. Go ahead, Ilyas. What is your favorite rule of thumb that you think works well in today's scenario? Go ahead.
So see, today or previously, I would still fall back to my favorite term, risk based. So any security investment, now before I ask and to get the real buy-in, I need to really represent the risk what is applicable to our environment in the language board can understand or the CEO can understand. It's not like technical risk register, but it needs to be represented in the way they can connect with. So that basically has to link with the business strategy and business objective, what the board really wants. I mean, the board wants to ensure that they want to have more customers, they want to have more revenue, they need to reduce the operational losses, and a cyber attack happens, what could be the financial or reputational or regulatory losses to the organization, and represent that in the way they can understand, and then you present what is a solution to mitigate or bring down that risk to the bank in a way that it will really ensure that all these risks can be mitigated. So that way, when we represent our budget requirement, they understand it better. And the other benefit now post COVID or this COVID brought us is that even the CISOs started to think how to be more business enabling. So if having the right security or supporting the cloud journey or ensuring that the working from home capability is there, the organizations are now understanding that having the right security is important also. I mean, if you don't have the right security, you don't get the confidence to go provision the working from home or to go to the cloud to ensure cost optimization. So what I do is I present my case in such a way that I enable the business, not I delay or block the business objectives on going to cloud or getting the right, or launching new services, the time to market. If I have the right security from beginning, the time to market with the new services is pretty quick, and that management can understand that better than I talk technical terms. So this is what the approach I takes these days.
Thank you, Elias. Very nice key takeaway there, that you are not blocking any new initiatives, especially the innovation ones around customer growth and so on. I think it's a very tricky line that you have to follow. Any experience where you think the investment is lopsided, going in a direction which you do not necessarily agree about? Does that actually happen, or is it just my thinking about that? Go ahead.
I did not get that question, Aaron.
I mean, based on this collective decision making, do you think that sometimes the investments may not be going in the direction that you are comfortable with? Does that actually happen? You means general CISOs.
So that is what probably I think bit differently, and I put myself in their shoes, and I consider, okay, after as a CEO or as a business, what is their objective is to ensure the customer experience. They want to ensure to get the maximum revenue. So I try to put myself into their shoes, and instead of finding a way how to block it, I say, okay, now how to facilitate that. Now that is maybe not the way I was securing earlier. I need to think and find innovative way to secure that. Where one of the approach I've taken is agile security. In security itself, I tend to be agile, not to ask for everything on day one, but ask for what is unavoidable on day one, and then tighten up the security in an ongoing basis. So that really helps to make sure that that objective of time to market is quick.
Very interesting. I really like that concept of agile. Put in the basic and bare minimum and required, and then add on as we go. Thank you for that insight, Elias. Coming to you, Sujata. Obviously, again, many hats over there. Your experience on how cybersecurity investment gets justified. Go ahead.
So again, be it pre-COVID or post-COVID, I think CFOs, your executive leadership, they've always been rational folks in terms that they understand numbers. And I think, and that's where we as security officials face the challenge of putting in the business context, as rightly Elias mentioned. As long as you align your security investment to the context of business, and you can add a value out there using your risk model analysis, saying, what is the kind of loss that you would actually be mitigating out there had a threat to be realized to a breach, right? In vis-a-vis actually having that solution or that security solution in place. And that's what gives them the value and the perspective to understand why that security solution needs to be invested in or have in place out there. So that's the best way. And also In addition to that, I mean, it's not just always about the cost or the value associated to a security solution. It's also about other aspects of it, wherein you say you also optimize resources, you also improve efficiency, you also reduce the cost of operations out there. So as long as you add these perspectives so that the management can see through it, I think you're through.
Brilliant. I like that last statement about cost of operations and optimization. I think this is very, very fundamental, and it is part of one of our questions which comes on later on. And I would again like to just take this up. Sujata, thanks for raising this one. I'll ask this question before we close the round. But before you do that, Nitin, your take on justifying cybersecurity investments to the decision makers at your institution. Go ahead, Nitin.
Arun, actually, I would like to take it in a different way. So actually, when I presented to the management, I didn't go and ask them for a cybersecurity requirement which I'm having. I will be explaining how is that going to be if there is no cybersecurity in place. So actually understanding what is the risk behind what is going to have after a breach happen, and what are the things which is going to go down after all those efficiently working things going down. So that actually gives us a upper hand on trying on a different technology or different aspect of cybersecurity altogether. So it's more than like looking into a new implementation. We always look into something like actually making it aware to the management that actually there are chances that actually, even though you think that actually your system is very secure at the moment, there are chances of getting it on a risky side as well. So understanding that and the implementation plans will help out a lot.
Something like the cost of failure of business or the failure of operations, and you make an assessment on that and then present it that this security cost versus operational failure. Is that something like that?
Absolutely right. So actually 2 or 3 days of downtime, how can that going to be affected over there in the business, and as well as how is that going to be a comparison between what is going to be the implementation cost of a technology in comparison with the downtime what we're going to have.
Thank you, Nitin. So I just want to raise the point which Sujata mentioned over here: optimization, cost of operations, rationalization, reducing costs. Is that today becoming an important part of a cybersecurity investment? Now, IT investments, typically you would show efficiency, you would show automation, and you would justify, look, so many man hours or work hours saved, and look, this is how we can justify this return of this. My question is whether we are coming to this in cybersecurity where solutions are cumbersome and we are required now to show efficiency in security operations. So 30-second answer. Ilyas, your take on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point from Sujata, because this is what how to get it delivered. I mean, the security objectives and in an efficient manner, like any other organizations or organizational objective. Cost optimization is again coming into a very, very important element nowadays after the COVID. So we have to find a way how to ensure that because the management is expecting that you are accountable for security, you have to deliver security, but give me 10% optimize cost, or 20% considering the current business scenario. But they don't expect that you will compromise 20% on the security. They want you to find ways how to get it done with the kind of control, the right control, but in an optimized manner. So we need to find how to automate, where to avoid resources, where we need to be having resources, where we need to engage with external consultant, what you can do internally with better efficient usage, and maybe multiple hats, wearing multiple hats for certain kind of activities. So this is all from a CISO's perspective. It's my accountability to ensure that the cost target is being met without compromising security. So it's a daily kind of challenge for me, and I have to ensure that this is getting done, and it's very important point.
Fantastic, Ilyas. Thank you very much for that. Lalit, your take on cost optimization as part of a justification of cybersecurity investment. Go ahead, Lalit.
So, as Ilyas and Sujata have mentioned, the cost justification is very important, obviously. And the fact is, it's more historic than in reality. What is happening is the CEOs, the CFOs, the salespeople who have come up the curve, they have never estimated a cost for security. I mean, security and IT were given. Those are basic. How much does an Microsoft Office cost, for example, or something like that? And because of that, they are suddenly finding themselves in a new paradigm where the information security is an investment, and they are also finding to their horror, if I may say so little strongly, is that really you have to what you're investing is actually a drop in the ocean. The kind of resources the other side has is huge, and therefore this is going to be a challenge situation for all CISOs, IT heads as the time goes by. Being a partner to them, obviously we understand this challenge, and of course being on the other side also, we've understood this challenge. So we are very conscious of this fact, and therefore you'll find most of our solutions, our products, our offerings center around ROI, center about quick paybacks, and things like that. So our privilege access solution, our UBA solution kind of give you a better security at the least amount of cost, if I can put it that way. And I think that is what helps a lot of IT heads, the CISOs, to also present it to their board. So our approach is technical as well as commercial, and I think that mix is something that we think will help our colleagues, CISOs, when they go to their boards, they go to their approving authorities to get the approvals in place.
Fantastic answer. Thank you, Lalit. Yes, it would be great if vendors bundle both sides, the technology innovation, the solution benefits, as well as, of course, the operational reduction of operational overheads. Within your take, 30 seconds, how do you think cost cutting, operational costs is now an integral part of justifying cybersecurity investments? Is it coming part and parcel of even the risk assessment and showing that, look, this is how efficiency is improving? Go ahead, Nitin.
Definitely, Arun. Actually, as far as all the industries are getting affected, as well as the operational costs compared to the risk cost, whatever which we are currently, I mean, we are analyzing on a day-to-day basis on each of the industries. Definitely, the operational cost as well as the mitigation costs, as well as the implementation of a cybersecurity platform cost might be a concern for the top management, definitely. But actually, when we think about it, we definitely don't think about the cybersecurity alone. We might be thinking about the cost optimization through a particular process improvement, rather than, I mean, as Ilyas has rightly said earlier, it's not basically a man-driven operation. Most probably it can be automated. Certain processes wherein actually we find out the risk can be automated, which can definitely bring out certain returns rather than getting the cybersecurity path alone. So that's a parallel path altogether. So cost optimization as well as the cybersecurity are two parallel paths which go line by line.
Thank you, Nitin. Very important. Yeah, go ahead, please. Go ahead, Ilyas.
Arun, give me 10 seconds. I just want to add one more point on that very important context to the context, because sorry for violating the process. It's actually about not only optimizing the cost for security, but actually right security can optimize the cost for the organizational other activities also. An example is like, for example, now a lot of organizations are considering working from home or vendors getting the work done remotely. So the challenge there is, for example, not having the right security, not having the visibility of the vendor's access or the staff access. How to ensure that visibility is there, the full visibility about their access and activities is important to know. And if that is implemented rightly, then we can actually having a cost optimization for the organization from an IT kind of engagements, IT projects, and even the facility for that, or even the provisioning of IT equipments to the vendors and other stuff. They can have BYOD. Their own devices can be used if you have the right security. So that can be sold as a cost optimization by having the right security. So that is how we can project security as a business enabler.
Thank you. Very important point. And I presume you for this you would work in conjunction with the IT department also, right?
True. So obviously we need to provide that by supporting IT to ensure that they can provision and have those kind of approaches, and we ensure that the right security is there and the right design for the security is there, so that they don't have to worry about providing these services to business or to the vendors.
So thank you much, Elias. And because we are logically heading in a certain direction, I will bring up one of the questions which was lower down, but this is the one which is more relevant, is that whether artificial intelligence, automation, machine learning can actually help make the enterprise more secure, as well as tackle the cost optimization, which we were just talking about, as well as the shortage of IT security skills. So this is the focus for the next round. So Lalit, would like to start with you. Where do you think we are headed with AI, ML, and let's say RPA on the IT side and other automation initiatives taking place? Is this going to finally help make the organization more secure when it's implemented by vendors in cybersecurity solutions? Go ahead, Lalit.
Yeah, thank you, Arun. So I think there was 1 decade back, there was a big turn of Six Sigma and a business process re-engineering initiatives. I think we are today at that stage. We keep hearing that investment in information security now is leading to better utilization and better optimization process and better output and a secured output to the customer. And that's why investments in information securities are also moving with a BPR project or a process improvement project, whatever name you want to give them. But of course, the latest name or the latest thing that we are doing is design thinking. So we are looking at the end user and then working out around that. Now, coming to the technologies, I think these technologies were around in some form or the other. But yes, artificial intelligence, machine learning has now become one of the development cornerstones of any solution. I mean, there was a time when a sequential development would take place and you would go step 1, step 2, step 3. But I think with the advent of compute powers that we have, with the storage utilization that we have, with access to clouds environment for cost reduction and optimization, with all these kind of technical advancement that has taken place, the AI and the ML piece has also grown along with it. And why is it so important? Because see, in information security, most of the time is actually spent on false positives. Is that there are issues that come up, you have to investigate and you close it. So is there a way which you can reduce the time, the human time that will be required to take care of this false positive? Is there a way you can reduce your, or you can, someone just mentioned to me yesterday, I want to make my help desk invisible. So they don't want help desk to be seen. So they're saying, can you do an RPA process where basis some condition, we just approve automatically? I think these are the technology, these are the products, and these are the solutions that are coming up. Our solution is also part of it with the kind of just-in-time principle solutions that we have, with the kind of user behavior analytic solution that we have, where there's a lot of AI ML which ensures that the resources time, whatever limited resources that we have, is actually spent on looking at areas which are very critical and which has an impact, and not the regular stuff. So that is where AI ML is playing a big part, and I think in coming times it will even play a larger part as we go along.
Thank you, Lalit. Very interesting. I like the word which you said, cornerstone. I think it's very correct. We are increasingly seeing all vendors and all even security channel partners, system integrators looking at AI. And you mentioned about human cost, false positive. These all inherently increase the cost of security operations and need to be obviously handled. Before I go to Elias, once again, I'd like to invite all attendees, in case there are any questions, please use the chat option. I see a good, healthy engagement taking place. So look forward to seeing your questions coming in from the chat option, and we'll definitely reserve the last 10 minutes for taking the questions. So Elias, over to you. Your experience of how and the vision of how AI, ML, other automation tools can reduce your cost and complexity of security operations. Go ahead, Ilyas.
Yeah, thanks, Arun. So as I think Lalit mentioned, very valid points. The operational challenges of enormous number of alerts and logs and analyzing those and come out with the right, where we have to focus. So that's a huge challenge for us for quite a long time. But the concern is that the AI name being misused by some of the vendors, at least, where there is no AI, but it's all kind of for the sake of AI. But at the same time, I would definitely agree that this is the way forward, and the data analytics and AI will have a major role to play in the security, to automate, to be faster in response, the mean time to respond on any cyber breach or potential incidents. This will play a major role. And on the other side, AI could be or not could be, I mean, already being used by the bad guys also. So that would be very sophisticated attacks that could target organizations by misusing AI, and especially on nation state actors and all who has the resources to launch a very sophisticated attack. They could use, just imagine a phishing email campaign that could be using AI to target very specific customers in terms of people or organization, by analyzing the data from the social media and find out what is the weaknesses, what is the vulnerability, where this guy can fall into a phishing email, and then customize that email and send it to him within no time, and that could be sent to millions of users. So we have to be on the other side also to be ready from an organizational defense mechanism with the right capability with AI and all. So one of the very interesting field or area what I have seen recently, which I'm working on, is AI-based human risk analysis. Like, who is actually more risky for my organization from a staff perspective. As I think the awareness part we mentioned, instead of training everyone the same thing, we need to understand who is more riskier, who can fall into, and how to train him with the right security awareness material. Actually, there are AI-based solutions that I'm now implementing, which is going to help me to identify that user who is posing me highest risk, and I customize the training for them. So I mean, there are many other areas as SOC and other areas, behavioral analysis and other stuff. We are seeing a lot of developments, and I'm looking forward what is next coming to make sure that we are proactively defending organizations.
Fantastic, Ilyas. Very valid points over there. I think the one concern obviously you flagged is the hype around the AI and whether vendors are in tune with the AI technologies to bring the solutions. Very valid point. And then, of course, the other points on usage of AI. But behavior analytics, Lalit, any take on that, on where we are on behavior analytics in vendor solutions, considering Arcon is leading over there? Go ahead, Lalit.
Yes, actually, we have come up with user behavior analytics, which captures not only the actions which the user does, but it also baselines the user behavior and gives access to any deviation from baseline. So it has a lot of data. It does a lot of AI ML engines behind it. It brings and highlights the risk. And as Ilyas mentioned, I think I just loved his idea about super personalization of security training. I think the tool that we have is actually highlighting the riskier behaviors, the riskier users, if I may, because difficult now with you have an non-human users as well now. So because they also have an identity, so they can be as riskier as anything, but you can't train them. So apart from that, I really liked his idea about super personalization. I think it's very important, and the tools that we have are able to highlight all of this very easily and very smoothly.
Thank you, Lalit, and thank you, Ilyas. Very interesting on the power user. Obviously, the power user could be a malicious, internal malicious user, or could be deviant, or could be anything. So absolutely brilliant points from both Lalit and Ilyas over there. Sujata, your take on AI, ML automation helping security organizations manage their enterprises? Go ahead.
Okay. I think the whole technology itself has taken great strides in improving visibility to security. And I say visibility because if you were to compare stats of an analyst, so typical SOC analyst 5 years back to now, he's a lot more empowered to take actions or respond to incidents much faster. Back in the days, you would at least, I mean, an incident coming in, an analyst would take about an hour to go about, investigate, figure out what are the actual, who's the root cause or the culprit out there, to then start taking an action. Today, courtesy these solutions, you are, the mean time to detect and the mean time to respond, as we would normally say, has drastically reduced, right? So today you can detect within about a minute or so, and you can complete the response action within the next 10 minutes. And that itself, I think, speaks volumes about how far the technology has actually improved to provide us that visibility to take action. And the other aspects, right, even with Arcon, like we mentioned, user behavior analytics bit, to be able to use machine learning techniques to say, what are the different geolocations that users are logging in from? What is the accounts that they're using and what is the actual behavior pattern? Do they even log in between 8 to 5 or do they suddenly log in at 3 a.m. in the middle of night? That sort of information to an analyst is gold mine, because it literally evens out his life and helps them take better response. So to me, artificial intelligence, automation, machine learning, definitely a plus, definitely has added a lot in terms of easing out the life of an analyst when it comes to a SOC. So great improvements there. And also from, actually echoing from what Elias mentioned, it also opens a Pandora's box, because right now we're just seeing the pros of these technologies. What lies underneath this? What is the security aspects when we are deploying machine learning? When we are employing artificial intelligence is something that's not really scoped for. So, so we're all in the dark in that sense, to say no one knows what to expect. But at this moment, I think everyone's just enjoying the pros of it, saying that it gives you that added advantage to be able to action better and give better visibility across things.
Fantastic. Sujata, as usual, you brought up another magic word, which is speed. So I think speed, ability to respond fast and in a predictable and deliverable manner is really a key thing over here. Of course, the pros and cons, just like vendors are investing in AI, so are the threat actors. So before we close this round, Nitin, over to you. We heard a lot about educational institutions using AI and chatbots and other things like that, to make so that students can have customized responses coming in from their online education. But in security, how do you see that actually working to your benefit? AI, ML, automation. Go ahead, Nitin.
Arun, definitely AI and ML will be adding a value to whatever which we're doing. I mean, an additional value to whatever which we're doing currently. But for me, AI and ML are not only the single source of thing which we can rely upon and get it tested on and get the risk away. So basically, it's just an additional part of it. Basically, when you come into a SOC on SIEM solution, when you implement AI on, many of the false positives can be treated as a very high risk thing, wherein actually the system is learning from whatever which you are providing them. So it can be basically an additional help which can be provided to the security analyst. But for me, I mean, it's more about how you train the system.
Great point over there, Nitin. Yes, I think if you have AI deployed, you can definitely learn from the false positives. You can definitely learn from baselines, like Lalit mentioned, and so on. But we are now coming to the last 10-15 minutes of our discussion. I see one or two questions coming in, and I'm going to mix this into our discussion here. And the concept of smart. So I think we heard about agile. Elias, you mentioned about agile way of building security. Sujata, you just mentioned about speed to detect. Can we have a smart solution? So Lalit, question over there coming in, does Arcon have a smart solution on SaaS? So I guess smart is your interpretation, but a typical acronym could be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-oriented, but smart for all practical purposes, hands-on. Does Arcon have a smart solution on SaaS? Is a question coming in over here. Go ahead, Lalit.
Yes, of course, we have a solution on SaaS for sure. Whether it is smart or not, we would like to believe that it's on the directions of smart and with a bit of a design thinking inbuilt around it. We are very specific. You can measure what you're doing. You have a great visibility. You don't have to put people around it. Optimized performance because it's part of our offering. So definitely it is a smart, but I think it's we leave it to the customer's experience with us to determine the final signatory of whether it's smart or not. But yes, we have a solution on SaaS model. It's based on the principle of design principles, because by default, a design principle is an outcome of a smart thought process. Therefore, it is available for use.
Very interesting about the smart thought process. Ilyas, your take, what would be your typical constituents of a smart solution that you would like to build up for yourself? Go ahead, Ilyas. Just looking at it from brainstorming point of view. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so see, my principle on security is always people, process, and product. So I believe that a solution only as a technical solution only, maybe it can be smart, but it cannot be 100% smart to give all what is required. It has to be part of the whole holistic approach in security, where we need to have the right process and frameworks and workflows, and then add the solution into that. And the solution, if can automate all of this as much as possible, then it is smart. As I said, like, instead of depending on people, or instead of depending on process to secure, if that process can be completely translated into the solution, and if the people dependency is even avoided, and it is resilient to people mistakes, yes, we can consider that as some sort of a smart solution. And at the ultimately, as any smart solution for me should be, going back to my risk principle, it has to manage my risk in an effective way, and it has to show me whether it is really bringing my risk down. And the other side is the maturity. I mean, is it going to help me to improve the maturity? I need to measure it. I need to have the key performance indicators to measure whether these are really making a difference in my security posture. It is improving my maturity, reducing my risk, and it is bringing value to the organization by providing a stable and secure platform for the business to kind of work on.
Very interesting. I guess if any vendor is using a management approach, and Lalit, end user management perspective, and you build it into a solution, I'm quite sure smart solutions should be able to meet Ilya's perspective. So thank you for that very interesting thing. Sujata, there's one question also flagged to you about remote access. It says, what according to you will be a checklist for securing remote access? Any thoughts on that? Because you mentioned quite a bit about the transformation of security to manage the pandemic. Go ahead, please.
Okay. So when we are looking at securing remote access, right, I think the first and most important thing that we need to keep in mind post-pandemic is ensuring we have a zero trust network, right? The moment you have a zero trust network, you are by default in that mindset or a zone of ensuring that we only enable access to those users who actually require the access when they require the access. And that way you ensure that there is no, you follow the principle essentially of least privilege, as I mentioned earlier. And you also ensure that there is no privilege creep happening, because what generally tends to happen over a period of time is the moment a user gets access, he collects more and more roles and more privileges out there. And over a period of time, he just doesn't require those access. And hence, the need to have a solution which can provide you access for that specific time becomes of paramount importance. right? So these are the major two aspects. I think the rest of it is pretty much standard or default. The only addition I think that we should also look at is even when we are looking at a VPN infrastructures, if you were to just draw parallels to what happened with the Twitter hack last year, right? It was a simple compromise of a VPN account credentials, and a teenager was able to flout that whole system out there, compromise huge accounts and huge names. And I think what we should learn from that and add to our checklist of ensuring remote access is to have a network which falls back on different systems before they actually give you access to the system. And it shouldn't be just a single account. SSO has its benefits, but it also has this major flaw where one single account can actually be a single point of failure, and I can give you complete access to your network. So you ensure your systems are laid out, or you have a defense in depth layer architecture such that no one has an actual direct access to any of your systems out there.
Thank you. Very interesting on the least privileges and privilege creep, and of course the last best practices which you mentioned. Nitin, I think we didn't get your take on smart. What would be your typical smart security solution in terms of a wish list? We heard from Ilyas in terms of people, process, products, risk, maturity. Your take. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. My take on it is basically smart should be smart. Basically, it should be less manpower utilization and more efficiency. That's what I'm expecting from that. So basically, it will be taking more for a person to identify the risk, identify what is going to be there in the alerts which is going to be to be provided, reduce that manpower involvement, and provide me with the right analytics what we require to analyze further. So, and also there might be non-issues, non-mitigation plans which might be in place. So that's a more understanding about the smart for me.
Thank you, Nitin. Very interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
I just would like to add another point there. I mean, I think all our colleagues out here have pretty much mentioned everything regarding smart, but I think we should include two more aspects to it, and one of them being sustainability to all the technologies that you actually invest in, ensuring. I mean, there's minimum change management controls that you need to apply in order to upgrade them, and you can actually use them for a longer duration. So sustainability, and the other aspect would be scalability. How scalable is that product or that solution across the whole IT value chain itself, or across different customers, depending upon the scenario, I think adds true value to smart security solution out there.
Thank you, Sujata. Again, lovely out-of-the-box questions and answers over there. Lalit, your take on scalability, since obviously Arcon has SaaS. What are your thoughts over there? Security solutions, are they making good use of scalable platforms and technologies? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think most of the solutions today, and especially Arcon solutions, load tested, capacity utilization testing done before given out to the market. And therefore, scalable, definitely very scalable, highly scalable, if I may say so, both in and into out kind of environment. And therefore, that's not a worry at all. The question of sustainability is somewhere where I kind of have a little difference of opinion with Sujata, not because of the concept. I think the concept is superb. What's happening is the attack surfaces are changing very fast. In fact, Microsoft and others are sending their OS upgrades very, very quickly. So having a solution with a very long upgrade programs is, I don't think in today's time is going to be an acceptable thing, because it's changing as fast as that. Not that we want to change, but it's just that it's changing because the vectors are changing, the basic 7 layers are changing very often. And that's the only point I think that we have to be a little cautious about. You don't want it to happen every week, and you don't want it to happen once in a year, because that's like to the extremes that we're talking about. And I really also like Sujata bringing up the Twitter point. I think one of the big things that we say with our solution is, and the question that we ask all our clients, that in reality, who are the ones who are using your social media account? And believe me, Ilyas is here, Nitin is here. All these social medias are done by marketing agencies. So they have access to your credentials. And so someone sitting outside the organization is using the credentials. Imagine if something goes wrong. And today, with social media playing a big part in reputational management, the risk potential has gone up. So do you require to share those passwords is the question that one has to keep asking. And that's where I think our solution kind of comes into play and says that you need a passwordless access in one way or the other. You don't need to give them those passwords. So those are some points that I had. So I hope I've answered the question.
Fantastic, Lalit. Obviously, Arcon continuously innovating from the feedback from customers. And before we go to the last round, which is the key takeaways from all of you, I just want to bounce off the same thing with Ilyas on the two aspects which Sujata raised, sustainability and scalability. Any thoughts over there? Any points of failure you think are appearing in vendor solutions? Your experience over there. Go ahead, Ilyas.
I think it's both are excellent points from Sujata's practical experience. I can understand that, and I don't know whether Lalit got it correct, but my understanding from Sujata on sustainability is that consistency and sustainability of the solution and the effectiveness of that, which is very true and which is very important for security, because when sometimes we implement the solution and it will not be sustainable for a period of time, or after a period of time it is not effective and it is not working as it is expected, it is not improving and managing the risk on a continual basis, that is a challenge we face. And other element, again, scalability, because when we invest in security, I mean, we wanted to ensure that that's a long-term investment. Okay, we may need to add on to that, but at the same time, I don't want to replace that with another solution and then start from zero again. So the solution at least needs to give that skeleton where I can change and add and remove and modify as we grow, as the threat vector is changing and we find more areas to improve. That's an amazing thought from Sujata, because that's very important for us. Otherwise, always what happens is, like, when I came here, I saw many solutions which was implemented that is not going to be used anymore. So I had to throw those solutions. I have to buy a new solution, and when I'm buying new solution, I don't want to throw it after five years or after 7 years. I am ready to upgrade, improve, but I want to have that skeleton and that core thing, ready to scale.
Thank you, Ilyas. Yeah, go ahead, Lalit.
Because thanks, Ilyas, for bringing that up. So there are two sustainabilities. One is the strategic, the objective of the solution that you're taking. Of course, it has to sustain itself. It has to go to 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, as the case may be. And there is the second is the operational sustainability, because that's another area where a lot of IT heads, the information security heads come into play. So that was my point, was more on the operational side. But I take your point on this strategic sustainability, because the objective of the solution has always to be met. I mean, that goes without saying, and it cannot be short term, it has to be long term. And I mean, I can just go back to Arcon. Arcon has been there in the same industry, same thought process for last 12 years. So you can see that's a long sustainability period.
Yeah, my experience.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I don't want to mention my experience, but yes, sustainability and scalability, I have experience with Arcon also. So I don't want to market your product right now.
Okay, fantastic. So all I think all vendors, whether they are enterprise applications or security or anything, are looking at the cloud computing as a key part, to build their innovation in. And I think scalability and like you mentioned, Ilyas, in the previous question about agile investment, I think you're quite on track with an agile approach and a scalable approach to using cybersecurity solutions. So with that, I'd like to close the questions, but I do want all of you to come out with your key takeaways. I see Nitin is not on the video. Yeah, Nitin, you're there. Nitin, anything you want to add on scalability and sustainability before I close with the key takeaways? Anything you have over there? Go ahead, please.
I don't know, it's basically the same. Actually, we should, I mean, the security system, whatever which we are having right now, should be scalable on a on a timely basis, wherein actually we can't predict and we can't expect something to be happening in the next 1 year on the security framework. So actually, basically, we require to have such a feasibility of adding and taking away certain things onto the security postures, whatever we are having right now. So sustainability is a must-to-have thing for us.
Thank you, Nitin. And Lalit, you very correctly mentioned attack surfaces are changing so fast that security vendors and solution providers like yourself do need to provide upgrades, patches, and so on, just to ensure the fabrics are in place. A very valid point over there, which you had mentioned, Lalit. So with that, I'd like to go to the key takeaways. So I just invite all of you to share in a minute or two what you would recommend as a key takeaway for the audience here, whether it's on best practices, recommendations, your experience. So let's start with you, Lalit. What would you like to share key takeaways from your side? Go ahead.
I think, thank you, Arun. So I think the key takeaway for me was that, a CISO is look like a super human being right now who's supposed to not only address the current evils of cybersecurity threats and all, but also estimate the future evils. At the same time, ensure that business is not impacted. So be one step of business. So must understand the business, must understand the domain, must understand the risk, must understand the various options available, and then move in that direction. So and then I mean, for me, one of the big thing, of course, is sustainability and scalability, but more importantly is the personalization of training of the security uh, training that is required for people. I think which Elias mentioned, and Nitin gave a super concept about there's a lot of emphasis on BFSI, but it's actually the data available all across. So it's not only BFSI, but a lot of education institutions like himself, which are now exposed from because of the work from home scenario. And I think sooner rather than later, we soon start having a lot of biometric verifications as the second factor authentication, because now, especially with work from home, you really don't know unless someone keeps the video on and then you trust the video is right. Is the person who's actually sitting in front of the endpoint is the person who has the right to access or view something. And one element which I think we need to be conscious of is there's already been an explosion in IoT and OT platforms, and that's going to go up. So in addition to human identity, you're going to have machine identity, which will explode at an exponential pace. So therefore, again, as I started my conversation, if you really want to get into the root of it, it's really the identity protection that will be the cornerstone or the real center point on which you will build all your security postures, among other things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lalit. Very interesting. And I do remember at one of the Arcon sessions, I think it was mentioned that an average employee has 40 identities when you divide the total number of digital identities by the employees. Am I right about that? The average number comes to 40.
Roughly like that.
So that is an absolutely interesting point.
And
Thank
I'd
you for
like
that,
to
Lalit.
add, I've heard scope creep, but this is the first time I've looked at even privilege creep. So I think that was very interesting.
Right. Thanks to Sujata's out-of-the-box answer. So, Elias, over to you. Key takeaways that you would like to share. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Arun, from my perspective, I love the point Sujata mentioned in the beginning. See, we tend to run behind the latest technology and solutions. Whatever the kind of terms and jargons come out, and then we try to buy, because security has to be built on fundamentals. It has to be having that basic strong. I mean, the fundamental strong. Now, whatever now even access related solution coming is actually addressing a fundamental problem, which is of access. So access related issue is a basic requirement. What we learned security maybe 20-25 years back. I mean, that time onwards we talk about least privilege, need to know, and multi-layer defense and all those concepts. But what happened is we forgot that basics and we ran behind what is the latest tools and toys available and buy that and implement, not use, and it doesn't kind of come out with the right solution. So once we have the fundamental, once we have the right basics, and then you build on that with the right solution that can complement whatever existing solution or existing processes, and have a right holistic approach towards security. You cannot buy a solution, implement and get the value unless you know what is to be achieved from that solution, unless you have the right processes to ensure that the solution is implemented and effective. It is not going to give the value. I mean, it will be like kind of a tool, another tool for IT and security. So those concepts are very important, and all of this needs to be risk based. So this is again I'm re-emphasizing, because I tell my team also always, risk is what is driving the whole information security journey. So we have to be risk focused. Our investment has to be risk focused. Our solution to business should be risk focused. You cannot just put a security policy and a control to block because you are security. I mean, you have to ensure that whether you are implementing the right control to protect the valuable information, and that will enable the business to take their journey of getting business and making money. If there is no money, no business, there is no point in having security. I mean, you have security to protect, not for the business. You are just there existing because of security teams has to have job. So we have to understand that we have to be a business enabler. If there is no business, we don't have job. That's it.
Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant answer. I think CISOs fundamentally need to be embedded deep into the organization. The deeper they are, the better their solutions that will work for them. And very, very interesting point you've raised over there and the key takeaway. Sujata, over to you. You've raised a number of out-of-the-box pointers to us, and we appreciate that. Go ahead on your key takeaways for the audience. Go ahead, please.
Definitely. So I think a lot of insights actually from all of the colleagues out of here. But I think the most important one or takeaway for me would be trying and implementing Agile Security. I think that's a very beautiful approach, and keeping in mind the whole post-pandemic issue and whole budget cuts and the 9 yards of things that we all go through in order to ensure we have the right security in place. I think adopting that that principle is of a good importance out there. So definitely that. And with secondly, when it comes to sustainability and scalability itself, right? Vendors, yes, they do provide a lot of sustainable options out there. But yes, to put it in context from an operation strategy perspective, like Lalit mentioned earlier, is also something I think we should keep in mind. Because as I think we come from more from a technical background than from a business perspective out there. So right, we often expect to ensure that the technology is round and up and about, and no matter what, we expect the whole 9 yards out of it. But yes, from the business perspective, yes, definitely makes sense what Lalit said. And finally, when it comes to robotic automation processes, which Nitin mentioned when he applied to his universities and the business schools out there, to be able to leverage that across AI and ML, and to also combat the security risks that can come out of it is something, I think we should all dig in deeper, because as you know, the threat landscape is ever evolving, ever increasing. And with the pandemic, I think it's only widened the attack surface, if anything less.
Thank you, Sujata. Again, very, very interesting points, but we've run out of time, so I can't bounce them off with the rest of the panelists. So Nitin, last word from you, key takeaway that you'd like to share, and then we'll be closing the session. Go ahead, Nitin.
Sure. Arun, actually, basically for me, whatever may be the technology which you are implementing for security basics for your company, it's not just the security should be in the picture. It's basically it should be in line with your business and whatever targets of the business are there for. So that's the key takeaway for this session from my side. Basically, even if you have hundreds of technology in place, hundreds of automations in place, there should be some value behind it. There should be some kind of link between your business and the technology, whatever you're incorporating. So it's basically the psychology of the business, involved in technology. That's it.
Thank you, Nitin. So I think we have all learned from the last 12 months that IT and security is a key part of business. I think all of our roles have become more exciting as we become better embedded with the organizations, and we strive to make sure that business is functional. And I think IT and cybersecurity has been really instrumental in helping business to recover through the pandemic and go forward. So with that, I'd like to close the session. So on behalf of Global CIO Forum and Arcon and the panelists here, Lalit, Ilyas, Sujata, and Nitin, I thank all the attendees for sitting through these 60+ minutes, absolutely engaging content, absolutely out of the box answers, and some fascinating discussion. So look forward to seeing you all once again, all the attendees, all the panelists. Goodbye, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.